Morning everyone, how are you all? Well, the sun's gone in the past couple of days and soon we'll be asking, probably by Saturday, when we're going to have some good weather. And the same people have probably been saying it's far too warm. The British talking or complaining about the weather is a national pastime, isn't it? Anyway, quite differently to my last thought for the day, I want to talk today about creativity. I want to ask you a question. Do you think yourself as creative, as being creative? And I would hazard a guess that most of you would not consider yourself to be creative. But I would suggest that everyone is creative. You might not feel that way. Think back to your childhood. I doubt that you were afraid to express yourself, say in a painting or a drawing. You would probably show your parents or your teacher proudly something that you've done, something that you've painted, something that you've made. And you wouldn't be afraid of doing that. But what happens along the way? We become afraid to express our creativity. Probably because it starts to begin to be evaluated, and we start to evaluate it ourselves based on what other people's perceptions are. And then we start believing that whatever we create isn't quite good enough, not up to the standard required. And we stop creating, or we think we stop creating. But I believe that every single one of us is endowed with creative ability. I read somewhere that we are image bearers of God, who created the universe out of dust, and the potential for creativity is written into our DNA. That's an incredible thing. I have to be creative. I can't live without being creative. If I'm not involved in doing something creative, I can slip into depression. And that can be any one of many things. I have to be writing a song or a poem or a story or doing a drawing or even baking a loaf of bread or cooking a meal. Those are creative acts. When I was deep in depression, there were three things that helped me climb out of it. One was reading the Bible and books on spirituality. I remember one of the books that I read almost every day was The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. I don't know whether I could tackle it now. The second thing was prayer. And the third thing was creating something, writing, painting, drawing. I seem to receive, I think God gave me that as a heightened thing during that time. And I began to think I was a genius, but I'm better now. We aren't all creative in the same way though. Some of us are gifted with the idea of the ability to pull new ideas out of nothing. Others develop those ideas and then add value to them and turn them into something useful or workable. And then there are visionaries who are creative, who take those ideas and make them happen. And then other people who may see ways of improving things that don't work so well. And that's a lovely vision for the church about working together, isn't it? And for some of us, and I include myself in this category, the desire to create new things is felt deeply. And we might fill notebooks with ideas for things we want to do or stories we want to tell. We we might dream of being published or exhibited or having our ideas released upon the world in some other way. And it's not because of vanity or a quest for fame, but it's because the creative impulse within us yearns for some satisfaction. But for others, creativity feels elusive. It feels like something that other people engage in, something that other people do. And you might think, oh, we'd love to get involved in doing something creative, but we lack the confidence, or we haven't got the skills. We've told ourselves we haven't got the skills. And we don't have anyone to teach us. And we need to recognize where creativity comes from. The Bible always reminds us of the awesome creative power of God. And Paul even says that the complexity and beauty of creation renders men without excuse for not believing in him. And then when Jesus arrives on earth, not as a warrior king, but as one of history's greatest storytellers, amongst other things, of course. Not only does this God make us in his own creative image, but he involves humanity in the creative process. Remember how he asks Adam, he gives over the naming of all the animals to Adam in Genesis. God is the source of our creativity and the enabler of our creativity. And recognizing this can be incredibly liberating. Suddenly our fears that we might not be good enough, or we can't summon up enough creative ability to do something or to solve a problem, we don't have to worry about that really, because we have access to an infinite creative resource. And sometimes we just have to ask for help. You are creative, I hear you all doubt. That doesn't necessarily mean you're great at coming up with ideas. Innovation is a process that begins with recognizing problems and opportunities, then moves from the ideas, development, enhancement, piloting, release and evaluation. Creativity is needed in every step of a process, and your skills, your experience and your personality may make you the most useful at one or two of these stages. And you have to work out what you can do, where you are, what link you are in that chain. And most people who identify themselves as being creative would agree that resources are finite. And while praying for help is an important element of refilling the well, you also have to have an openness and a commitment to receiving inspiration from the world around us, all that God has given us and placed before us. And I think in St Albans there's a wealth of creativity. There are some beautiful singing voices. There's the music of Lawrence, Barry and John. Remember the making of the cross on the altar wall, initiated and made by Carl, but to which everyone contributed. Remember, we all put a little piece of tile on there with our names on the back. Look at the tapestry and the tapestry frieze at the back of the church, which was initiated by Jo when she was here, but so many other contributors. John's gardening expertise, always put to some charitable use. See, I envy John's talent in that way. And then there's the creative minds of the children's helpers and the creations of the children. The people who prepare intercessions, that's a creative process. And even, would you believe, a sermon is a creative act. And I could go on. And together we can create, and we can create to glorify God, and we can teach each other. Like I would love to learn some carpentry skills. Carl, if you're listening. And we can be ever more creative in worship, and we can be creative in our relationships. Look how we've been creative during this COVID time. Tom particularly has been so creative, putting all the computer bits together, and not forgetting Helen as well. That's the creative process at work. And by drawing inspiration from God and from others, and by acknowledging and finding out our own creative gifts and potential and those of others, we can demystify the process of creativity. So don't let anyone tell you that you're not creative. You're made in the image of the most creative being in the universe. So let's create together. And I'll see you soon. And God bless. Take care and keep safe. Bye-bye.